This particular group has a chance to be very, very special and historic.
Still, somehow that hate and that passion for this rivalry still
The
exists.
same schedule that they depicted us to be the last in the freaking conference is the same schedule that we're 8-4 on.
Not quite, my friend. Give me the Mountaineers, baby.
Neal has done exactly what he said he was going to do when the university entrusted him in this position. Trust the climb, give me a few years, let me get my culture in here, let me build the way I'm going to build.
Welcome in, everyone. It is another episode of the Walkthrough Game Day Show presented by West Virginia on SI. I'm Schuyler, Callihan. That is my partner, Eugene, Napoleon, legendary West Virginia running back. It's our final game day of the regular season. We will have a bowl preview as well, so this is not the last time you'll see us together here on this platform this year, but we'll take a look back slightly of the West Virginia win over UCF, but more so bigger picture, what this means for Neal Brown. Also talking about the Big 12 title race, which West Virginia is still technically not mathematically eliminated from. And then we'll get into some college football playoff talk, which we haven't really had a whole lot of yet, but we'll give our thoughts on the 12-team format, who we expect to be in there, and, of course, breaking down the game between West Virginia and Texas Tech before we get into our pick'ems to round out the show. So, Gene, 31-21, West Virginia gets the win over UCF, getting bowl eligible, moved to 5-3 in Big 12 play. A win this weekend would be the second straight year where the West Virginia Mountaineers go 6-3 in Big 12 play, which would be the best two-year stretch since the Mountaineers joined the league. However, if you look back at the schedule, we've talked about this numerous times, it's not like the wins have come against some of the best in the league. And as a matter of fact, it's been towards the bottom of the league that they've kind of benefited from. And those 6 losses have been towards the team that tend to have a pulse. So let's just get right to it. 6-5. Some kind of feel like with the win over UCF, just getting the bowl eligibility, have a chance to get a win number 7 and maybe even win number 8, that might be just enough for Neal Brown to keep his job. I don't know. This has been a very close to the vest situation. It was kind of the same thing when Ren Baker and company went through the men's basketball head coaching search before they landed on Darren DeVries. And I think it's going to be the same situation here. Whether they keep him or move on, it's going to be very close to the vest, very secretive. But something tells me there's still a chance that there is a move made at the end of the season. What do you think of this whole situation at this point in time, and what's your gut telling you?
My gut, well, first off, I'll go back to beating teams that have a pulse. Okay. That's a problem, I think, for any Mountaineer fan, because you understand, if you know the history of West Virginia football and our great tradition, that's not what we're built on. So you're beating the bottom dwellers of a conference that most consider not to be that strong last year and this year. And then we didn't even play some of the teams. We didn't play Colorado. There's a few. So if you look at it, if we would have played Colorado, who knows what would have happened? You play Arizona State. Who knows what would have happened? Yeah. So when you think about it from that aspect, I don't think people would say those would have been 2 wins. I think most would say they would have been a loss. Kansas State probably would have been a loss. Kansas.
Yeah, or Arizona State. They did beat Kansas, but Arizona State would probably be a loss. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know how our fan base would feel about that. When I'm looking at Neal's situation as a coach, you start to put him against some of these other coaches, and then you realize his resume doesn't stack up. So now when you say, do we go into a 7th year with this, with next year, you're going to play these teams that you didn't play this year. What do you think about that? My gut tells me I think it's time to turn the page. My gut tells me that. Now, whether Ren Baker and the hierarchy at WVU from administrative standpoint to make that decision, I'm not sure, but my gut would tell me It's time. If there's ever a time to turn the page, it would be now.
Yeah.
It would be now.
It's hard to sit here and think of any other period in WVU football history outside of years ago. I'm talking decades ago, where it was mediocrity for this long. And I hate to say that because, I mean, I don't want to put this on the players. That's not necessarily where I'm going with this. But when you have average results for 6 years, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, how can you pitch to the fan base that a seventh year is going to make any difference? Because the reality of it is, Gene, like in the world that we live in now with college athletics, you need your fan support more than ever, because that's kind of your I don't know, your pockets, so to speak. Before it was somewhat of an even level playing field, but now you've got the ability to pay people, and West Virginia is a poor state. Like it is what it is. Where West Virginia's already working at a disadvantage, and if you continue to roll out the same product and the same results continue to happen year after year, how can you get fans to back this and to support this, to donate their money to? They're already paying the money to go to games, which is one of the most expensive game days in college football. And now you're going to ask them to donate more on top of that for what? They haven't shown anything. So I
Right.
understand, and again, a change doesn't necessarily mean success will follow. There is no
Right.
guarantee of that. But at least by making a change, you're providing hope that there will be some success.
Listen, let me go back now because those tailgates.
Yeah.
Listen. I told you that's not going to age too well for Neal.
No.
If you're paying all this money, you got to have a good atmosphere and you got to have a good tailgate. So
And
let's
those
be clear.
tailgates are expensive.
They are.
Some of those
You
spots,
want,
I can tell you, they're pretty pricey.
all jokes aside, you definitely want the product on the field to match, or you want to feel like it's matching what you're paying for.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, you want to feel like the coach, you believe in the coach no matter what. And it's not because the buyout is so expensive that you have to keep him. You want to keep him because you think he's a quality coach. You think that in the future, he may have had one or two down years. But when you get into the crux of what we're talking about, like you said, I agree with you 100%. It can't be mediocre. We've been mediocre since the last 2 years of Dana Holgerson. And then you get into Neal Brown, right? Not a slap against Neal Brown because he had nothing to do with Dana's tenure, but we went from an embarrassing national, on the national platform with some of the antics and some of the things that, and I'm gonna say it, that Dana was doing. So you go from that to you have to change the page and make it such a drastic change to rebuild our reputation and rebuild our national image. So then you bring in Neal Brown. Okay, fine. And then
Polar
you go
opposite.
and then you go polar opposite, and then you go 6 years. That's where we are now. So I wonder if you decide to turn the page, what are you looking for in a coaching candidate? Uh, Now, that'd be an interesting question for a search committee and the upper administration to say, what do we want? Do we want somebody that we bring them in and we know they got scandal, we know they got baggage, but they won championships someplace else and they have a great record? Or do you want somebody that's middle of the road, maybe won championships, but they know how to win and they know how to build a program? Do you want that person? See, for me, I'm gonna go back. It's old. It's gonna be an old school thing, real quick. Give me somebody that has West Virginia ties. Give me someone that's already been at WVU. And the reason why I say those things, there's a recruiting landscape that comes with West Virginia football. If you go back successful, there is a certain West Virginia recruiting landscape that's always seemed to work. We've gotten away from that with these last two coaches. That's one. Two, for some reason, these other coaches that are coaching other places that are successful, that we tend to forget about for whatever reason, they're successful for a reason. There's a certain decorum that they have when it comes to recruiting a certain style of player that fits exactly what West Virginia does.
I can't hate it. I some of my see I disagree a little bit. I
Mm-hmm.
think you would like to have somebody with West Virginia ties. I don't think it's necessarily a must in the situation. If you have it, that's great. For me, if I'm Ren Baker and I make a change, I want somebody with a killer mentality because
Absolutely.
these last 6 years, I have not seen that out of Neal. How many times have we seen games where West Virginia's actually up 2 or 3 scores, right? They
Right.
kind of ease up off the gas pedal a little bit, and all of a sudden, boom, here comes Pitt, and they just beat you. Or boom, here comes Arizona State, or excuse me, Arizona, and they almost do the same thing that Pitt did to you earlier in the year. There's several other situations where that's happened. And to me, that's just the one thing. I feel like at some point, and Neal said this too, like the players kind of take on the lead of the coach, right? However he's acting or going about, if he's hanging on to a loss, the players will do the same. If he's moving on, the players will do the same. I think at some point too, it's a collective, it's a bigger picture thing. And hey, Neal gets a win, and it's like, oh, it's a sigh of relief, right? It's not that, yeah, that was the expectation going into the game. And I feel
Right.
like that can trickle down into the players as well, and that there's that added pressure to it. So I think you get somebody that comes in, has a killer mentality, has the confidence of going into every single game saying, hey, I don't give a shit like what the other team's record is, what their ranking is. We're going to go win this damn game. Where
Absolutely.
Neal Brown, I don't get that feeling. I'm not saying that's what he's like behind closed doors. No one knows that except for those in the building. But I don't get that sense. To me, and I've told you this too. I would want somebody that's like a Dan Campbell esque type of coach, a tough, hard nosed, gritty son of a gun that matches the identity of this state. And you know what? He doesn't have to be all buttoned up and tied, like he's, and I'm not trying to take a shot at Neal here, but like he like legitimately is a son of a high school principal or whatever. Like I want a little ruggedness to him. I want a little toughness to him. And to be not be afraid to walk the line in some of his press conferences. I think that's what I would want if I'm Ren Baker. Somebody that has that type of mentality but at the same time can relate to the players and that can give a coaching aspect where the players take on to the coaching too and not just turn away from it. That's me.
You spoke right into the reason why I said a West Virginian.
Because
Dan
they know
Campbell
it more than
played.
anybody. But
Dan Campbell played where? Yeah.
he played at the Detroit Lions.
Yeah. He understands the culture. He understands the city, the state, the people of. He understands that. West Virginia is unlike any other college in the country. And I've been blessed to visit quite a few as a recruit. And with my son when he's being recruited, and I got coaches that are in every facet at every level in this beautiful game of college football. West Virginia is different,
It
and
is.
and that's why having someone from that past makes a lot more sense because they'll know the type of kid that you have to recruit. They're not guessing. They can sit in a parent's home and speak to exactly what West Virginia really is as a state, as a community, as a university, and the tradition of what this football program was that we need to get back to. When you bring people in that's not from that, they can speak to it, but it's not from here.
Yeah.
It's from here. And there's a difference. I speak about West Virginia sports and football and university and the state passionately because I went there and I traveled throughout that entire freaking state when I was there. I was the university ambassador my senior year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So I
that,
went everywhere.
and that's what I've told people before. Like, you may have been born and raised in New Jersey, but you're as every bit of a West Virginian as I am, or as anybody else. And
Yeah.
once you've experienced that and lived that through, you
Yeah.
kind of have a different understanding for it. It's not just another school. It's not just another state. It means something. To me,
I'm
it's almost like how some, people in the country are very, very patriotic, all about the United States of America, and it's the same way about WVU or West Virginia, for that matter. The two are linked together. It's like a
Yep.
patriotism towards WVU or the state, in that this is us versus everybody else,
This
and
is
that's the
ours.
kind of right. And the one thing that I wanted to point out too before we move on is, I think I said last week, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, not really sure. But when I said, the timing of this would have to be really kind of nailed down soon, because you have signing day December 4th, December 5th, whatever the day is. Last day of the regular season, November 30th. It only gives you a handful of days to go through the coaching search, keep guys, all that stuff. Then I started thinking, Gene, I'm like, well, wait a second. My mind is stuck in the old version of college
Right.
football, right?
Yeah.
We're not in that version anymore. The transfer portal opens the minute that you fire a coach. That opens for 30 days for the players on your roster. So if Neal Brown got fired, say today, they would have a month to go hop in the portal and go somewhere else. But
Yep.
you also have the transfer portal in the spring, or in the winter and the spring, and then there's, I believe, maybe even one in the like late in the summer. I can't remember exactly the dates. They switched them all around. But my point is here too, you have to cut down your roster significantly. There's going to be a cap on how many players can be on your roster. You're not going to have as many walk-ons anymore. So
Right.
you're going to have a bunch of guys hitting the portal. Even Matt Rule said it the other day. Our guy at Nebraska, he said there's going to be 30 to 40 guys that hit the transfer portal this year for us. And that's going to be the same everywhere,
Everywhere.
because you have a
Yes.
cap of players that you can have. So if you have a mass exodus of players, and that's going to happen anyway, and then you're going to have guys that, that you want to bring in yourself, you have to make more room. Like there's going to be a lot of roster turnover. I feel like not only at West Virginia but everywhere this upcoming offseason. It's going to be something we haven't seen before. So I don't know that firing a coach a week after signing day in December is really going to matter. You still have the signing period in February too.
Yeah. No, I listen, I agree with you 1,000%. You're 100% correct. I didn't even think about that because I'm looking at what everybody else is doing. You see how
Yeah.
many head coaches are cleaning out their desk right now? It's like, wow, it's amazing to me. But what it shows me and what it tells me is this: these ads and presidents want to make sure that their fan base, their constituents, and their alum are seeing, hearing, and expecting hope and things to change and what they need to look forward to for next season. And these presidents and ads are getting it done quickly and efficiently. We
Yeah.
appreciate you. Thank you very much. There's the door. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. There's the door. Thank you very much. There's the I mean, listen, thank you. Look, thank you for your contribution to the university. We appreciate you. There's the door. I mean,
Sometimes I mean, it is a cutthroat business, man. But like, at some point, the results have to matter. You can't just continue to kick the can down the road, because in some instances, kicking the can down the road really backfires in terms of money. Like, you may be thinking that you're saving money when you're dropping the buyout year over year after year. But if you're losing that fan support, maybe not support in terms of showing up to the games, but you may not have the NIL support to be able to
right.
keep players. I mean, that's really going to hurt you. So, I mean, you got to find a way to walk that line. But you're 100% right, man. I think it's a tough decision. Personally, I think it's past due to move on. And as I said at the beginning of the season, last year you won 9 games. This is the year to prove that you're turning the corner as a program. You build upon a 9-win year, especially when you have a returning starting quarterback heading into his 5th year. You have
Right.
returning guys at receiver, quarter or running back, offensive line. You had returning pieces all over that offense, and here you are going into the last week of the regular season at 6-5.
You can't
So
turn, can't go backwards. You're 100% right. I expect, like I said, either 9 games or 10 games this season. That's what my expectations were. But we already know sometimes expectations don't meet reality.
that is absolutely true, my friend. However, there is a chance, Gene, and this is when I get that little Jim Carrey thing from Dumb and Dumber. That little meme sticking back in my mind where it's like, "You're telling me there's a chance?" Well, there is a chance, Gene, that West Virginia can get to the Big 12 title game. They only need these 18 things to happen. I'm going to run through them. It's not really 18, but here's what has to happen for West Virginia to get to the Big 12 title. Number one, and it starts and potentially ends on Friday. If any one of these things doesn't happen, it's over with. So Friday at noon, Black Friday, Oklahoma State, Colorado. West Virginia needs Oklahoma State to beat Colorado. They haven't won a game in league play all year. If they don't and they go 0-9, well, then that ends the dream right there for West Virginia. But let's just say they do for fun, for laughs and giggles here. Moving on to Saturday, West Virginia needs Kansas to beat Baylor. Kansas has played well of late. They've beaten 3 straight ranked teams. You like your chances there. Then, obviously, the biggest Captain Obvious thing here, West Virginia has to beat Texas Tech. If not, it's over. Arizona State has to beat Arizona. Arizona State, maybe it's a little bit of a hangover with that BYU wins. Maybe, maybe not. The next thing is they need TCU to knock off Cincinnati on the road, preventing Cincinnati from being bowl eligible. And then the sixth and final thing is they need Houston to go on the road and beat BYU, who is ticked off after losing 2 straight games, especially the way they did last week to Arizona State. If all of that happens, Gene, the Mountaineers are headed to Arlington. They're headed to the Big 12 title game, and they would play the winner of whoever wins the Kansas State-Iowa State game this weekend.
I don't drink, but I'm going to take a sip of water on this.
Bottoms up, my friend.
There's a lot. There's a lot, but you know what? Let me say this to you real quick, buddy. That's going to be dashed come Friday.
Probably.
Let me tell you something.
I wasted 30 seconds of breath right there.
Deion Sanders is so pissed with the way that this thing played out. I am sure that they may not lose another game. I am sure. Said just laughs. Let's just say that Colorado loses. The slate of things that has to happen come Saturday is
still ridiculous.
It's too overwhelming, too ridiculous to even fathom that any one of those 6 things would happen.
Let alone all of them.
Like you said, not let alone all of them. But here's what I mean real quick about us being in this position, WVU being in this position. We should not be in this position. Yeah. People may not like to hear this, but I'm going to tell you something. Rich Rodriguez said something that really caught my ear in the beginning of the season at Jack State. And he said, when we get in the conference play, we are going to handle our business. We're not going to hope and wait for anybody to do anything for this program. We are going to handle our business.
Love it.
I don't have to say it, but I will.
And that's the killer mentality that I was talking about.
December 6th.
And no, I'm not saying Rich Rod to West Virginia. Before you flip out on me, everybody, just calm down.
Right. I'm saying that mentality with not worrying about what somebody else is doing and waiting to see what they're going to do for you. You take the bull by the horns and do what you need to do. That's what I'm talking about. And again, if that's not your temperament, there's nothing wrong with that. That just simply means this may not be where you need to be going into year 7.
Got a point.
So, yeah.
So, again, West Virginia likely not headed to the Big 12 title game, but if they do, maybe they would be a part of this next conversation that we'll have, and that is the college football playoff format. What we are going to do now is predict how the 12-team field will unfold since we won't have a show next week. Well, I shouldn't say that, Gene. If they do find a way to get to Big 12 title game, we're going to have another show next week. But probably not. I'm not going to make any plans for us to start recording next week. So anyway, 12-team playoffs. So how this works, and Gene and I both kind of messed this up. It's kind of hard to understand. I just thought, hey, if you're a Power 4 conference, you're getting in as long as you win a conference championship. That's not the case whatsoever. The Big 12 can be left out of this field if that's how the committee sees it. It goes to the top 4 highest-ranked conference champions get the first round bye. They get the top 4 seeds. After that, it's 5 through 12, however they see fit. So let's go ahead and we'll roll with mine first. My top 4 we'll actually flip back and forth here. So my top 4 seeds, I've got Oregon as the number 1 seed. I've got Georgia number 2. Miami number 3 winning the ACC, and then Boise State number 4 as the Mountain West Conference champion. Feels so weird to put them there, but I mean that's just the rules, so we got to play by them.
And I know
Moving
that
over to
I
Gene's
had
bracket, your top 4.
I had Oregon number 1. I had Georgia coming out of the SEC at number 2. I had SMU, believe it or not, at number 3, and I had Boise, as you just said, at number 4. That's just the rules of the game. That's how that's how they had it. That's what it is. Yeah.
And then, so we'll go ahead and stick here with Gene's bracket here on the screen. The rest of the first round matchups, he's got number 5 Notre Dame playing number 12 Ohio State, 8 Bama, 9 Indiana, 6 Penn State, 11 Texas, 7 Miami versus 10 Ole Miss. And then you can see here on the screen how he's got it all predicted out. Oregon versus Georgia and the national title game. Oregon as your national champion, Gene.
That's what I had. Yeah. I just think that for me personally, they're the most well-rounded team. Not saying they are juggernauts, because they're not, but I think the best well-rounded team in college football this season.
Mm-hmm.
They just seem to do they'll do everything right, but they're well coached, great on special teams, solid on offense, solid on defense. And if you're going to win this whole thing, you have to have those attributes week in and week out. And it seems to me every time I see them play, they prove certain things wrong when people say, well, Oregon can't do this. They can't pound you. They can't run between the tackles. And then they do. Well, they don't throw the long ball well. And then they do. Well, they can't stop the run. And then they do. They don't have any big, special team. And then they do. So to me, if you have a team like that, it's hard to say that they won't be able to compete for a national championship. It's not the Oregon of old.
No, it's a lot different fashion. Very, very stingy defense at times. Dan Lanning, like you said, really good coach. As I did, I have number 1, 2 going into this thing. So we'll go back to my bracket here. I've got Ohio State at 5 against number 12 Iowa State, 8 Notre Dame versus 9 Tennessee, 6 Texas against 11 Indiana, and 7 Penn State against 10 SMU. And as you see there, I have Ohio State and Texas playing in the national title, with Ohio State taking the cake there. And hopefully my aunt and uncle don't see this, because then they'll be like, oh, you actually picked Ohio State? No, they are Ohio State fans. They're West Virginia fans too, but they live in Columbus. So yeah, but I'm going to Ohio State. I think the matchup between them and Oregon in the semis is going to be a really good one. They've already played earlier this year. Oregon won by 1. I think it was 35-34, something like that. Could have went either way. I think Ohio State gets them back. It's just hard to beat a team of that quality twice in the same year. So I think they get the revenge. Georgia against Texas in the semis. Texas has got too much firepower offensively. I don't believe in Carson Beck getting the job done. So that's why I have Texas moving on. I know Quinn Ewers has been banged up, but hey, even if Arch Manning has to play, I think they got enough talent around him. And I think he's pretty darn good too to get him there. So overall thoughts on this 12-team format, and what was the hardest thing about putting this together for you?
Honestly, looking at it and feeling bad that we don't have a legitimate contender from the Big 12 conference. Honestly, number 1.
Yeah.
2, I would hate to say, but Boise State, it just seems
odd to
odd.
Put them at
it just does. But you can't disrespect what they've done on the field. So that's kind of interesting. And then to look at these rankings and I don't see Clemson.
That is odd. Yeah, I almost put them in. I almost did. I almost put them in over SMU, and I'm like, if SMU gets to the ACC title game, I can't put Clemson in there.
Yeah. So and again, for me, I'm like, wow, to see SMU roll the way that they're rolling, it's like, and then I realized that, no, man, listen, SMU was legit.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way I think about Indiana. Like, Indiana's legit. Like I said, they ran into a buzzsaw Saturday against, Ohio State, but coach got them playing. Signetti has them jokers playing. Yeah. So for me, those were the little odd, spots for me.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me was just trying to find a way to, once I really understood the rules of it to find a way to get a Big 12 team in there.
Yeah,
And the more I thought about it, I'm like, you know what? Like, look, the Big 12 plays 9 conference games. And Chris Kleiman, a Kansas State coach, he talked about this earlier in the week, hit it right on the head. The Big 12 is doing itself a disservice by playing 9 conference games if everybody else is playing 8. Because you may look at it and see Iowa State or Arizona State or BYU, and they're all 9-3, or Kansas State's 9-3, or whatever. And you look at it and 9-3 is not that strong. But if they don't play 9 conference games, you're more than likely dropping one of those games, playing another non-conference against probably a low G5 or FCS team, and boom, all of a sudden you're 10-2. So it's kind of the same to me. A 9-3 record in the Big 12, depending on whose schedule you're looking at, that is, versus
right.
a 10-2 team in the SEC, again, depending on the schedule, pretty comparable, right? So that's why I found a way to get Iowa State in there. And when you look at, you could put Alabama in the mix. I left them out. They lost to Vanderbilt. Iowa State doesn't have a bad loss on their schedule. You could say that with Kansas, but I mean, Kansas is playing really well right now. Vanderbilt's played good, but if you put Kansas and Vanderbilt on the same field together, I think Kansas is going to win that game pretty handily. So
Right.
I wanted to show a little love to Big 12, and I went with Iowa State there at number 12. But I mean, I think they have to go to 8 games. If everybody else is playing 8 games, you've got to do the same too. And heck, that'll even help out Neal Brown's record here, assuming he's here next year.
I knew you were going to get that in there. And that's nice. No, I agree with you. That actually is nicer, but it makes sense. If everybody else is doing it, then that conference, that league needs to do it, because bottom line is this. The disservice comes in when you start to look at, everybody's talking about, well, strength of records and strength of this person ain't play that person and all that kind of good stuff, right? I think I had 4, I think it was 4, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 4 Big Ten teams in my 1 through 12 for
Yeah.
my bracket, my personal bracket.
I did too. Yeah, I had 4.
I'm like, wow. And I'm looking at this thing and saying, I realize, like, and of course, one independent with Notre Dame, obviously, but I'm looking at this thing and saying, I don't know if any, outside of Boise State, if any one of our Big 12 teams would beat any of these top 10 teams.
Yeah.
And that's crazy to think. But when you look at it realistically, Oregon, Ohio State, well, we saw what Penn State did. Okay. Georgia, Texas, Notre Dame, Ole Miss. Somebody would say, well, maybe Indiana. But then again, Indiana is a really, from top to bottom, they are a really good football team. It's not the Indiana of old, right? SMU, they score a lot of points. I don't know. Defensively, if they get on the rhythm, it's kind of hard. Boise State and Miami is iffy, buddy. To me, they're up and down. But again, you would have to stop Cam Ward for 3 freaking quarters to beat Miami. I don't know if any defense in the Big 12 is stopping him for 3 quarters.
Iowa State's the only one I think would maybe give them trouble. Heacock's a really good coordinator, and that umbrella defense that they play is really, really hard to solve, as West Virginia has been able to figure that out a few times. But yeah, it's tough. So that's our 12-team prediction for the college football playoff. Again, because West Virginia is probably not going to have 18 things happen for them. We're not going to be able to talk about this next week when they do unveil the CFP next, I believe it's next Sunday or Monday. So let's do our trivia for the week, Gene, and it's our last one of the regular season. So let's do this. West Virginia has won each of its last 4 games when ending the season on the road. This is not counting the COVID year. They beat TCU, Kansas, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. Who was the last team they lost to closing out the season on the road to? Kansas State, Iowa State, or Oklahoma? Give a think on that for just a second. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll reveal the answer and dive into our preview and prediction for West Virginia and Texas Tech.
Welcome, everyone, to Lubbock, Texas, and Jones AT&T Stadium, home to the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And this crowd, as always, will be rowdy because they've been gearing up since early this morning. What a game we have in store for you today. A Big 12 showdown, and the implications could last for the rest of the season. As we'll see, the West Virginia Mountaineers taking on the Texas Tech Red Raiders.
A weapon.
Off the play fake on first down to throw. Complete downfield.
Battle, but I like trying to get this guy the ball in space.
Reels it in the end zone. Touchdown, Red Raiders. Back to pass, it's Green. He's got it, and he will score. Touchdown, Mountaineers. Gonna run it, it's White. Across the 25, he's got room. And he rolls into the house. Touchdown, Mountaineers. He leaves it with his back. Crosses the 30, he's got a lane. And he will finally go out of bounds after another big gain, and they are absolutely gashing them with this running game. Can't pick up the first without scoring. Back to throw, it's Green. He wants it all. He's got it in the end zone. Touchdown, West Virginia. Third down conversion, and then try to turn it into some scores, and fast. Got his man. Bringing the heat. Oh, I thought he was taking that all the way, but they stop him at the 7. Looking for a man. It's Morton. Dances away to buy time. And he'll race it to the house. Touchdown, Red Raider. He's looking to throw it. Unloads to the wideout. Got his man downfield. He's looking to throw. Grabbed in the end zone for a touchdown, and there's still a hill to climb, but they are still fighting, staggering, stumbling, but still upright and not finished yet. And the whole thing pretty much comes down to this onside kick. Few anxious moments there, but the hands team true to its name as they make the grab and get the ball. Running out the clock seems to be a mere formality here as they are ready to snap it in victory formation.
Back here on the Walkthrough Game Day Show, I'm Schuyler. That is West Virginia legendary running back Eugene Napoleon. And before the break, we asked our trivia question for the week. It's time to get Gene's thoughts on that trivia question and reveal the answer. So once again, the question is, West Virginia's won its last 4 games when ending the season on the road, not counting COVID year. And they beat TCU, Kansas, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. Who was the last team to beat West Virginia in this situation, closing out the season on the road? Was it A, Kansas State, B, Iowa State, or C, Oklahoma? Gene, what say you?
I know I'm probably going to be wrong because these things have been stumping me all freaking season. I believe it was A, Kansas State.
No, it was not. So you continue to stub your toe down the stretch here, Gene, and that's okay. You're doing it in the pick'ems too. Oh, I probably should do that. That's going too far. Shots fired. I know. All right, it's getting a little hot in here. My bad. So, yeah, it was C, Oklahoma. That was the 2017 game. Will Greer broke his pinky the week before against Texas. If you remember, Chris Chugunov was in the game at quarterback. Had a rough day. They ran a lot of Wildcat with Kennedy McCoy. I think it was 59-35 or 59-31. It was a bad game.
Let me have you laughing. The one thing I'll take some pride in, I don't look this stuff up.
Yes, I do believe that. I do believe that. And I hope the fans that watch this every week don't do that too, because I know we take a break. There's like 3 minutes. Well, you could probably go and search on Google. Don't do that. Have some fun with it. It's not like we're actually keeping score here.
Right.
Now, the pick-ems, again, that's a different thing. We'll get to that here in a second. But, anywho, players to watch for this week's matchup between the Mountaineers and Red Raiders. For Texas Tech, it's running back Taj Brooks. He is the 6th leading rusher in the country. West Virginia saw the 3rd leading rusher last week, so they get a little bit of a break this week. Just kidding. Taj Brooks, 1,300 yards, 14 touchdowns. Defensively, Jacob Rodriguez, the linebacker, he is all over the place. He is also sixth nationally in his main statistic, which is tackles, 113 on the year. Has 4 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 3 pass breakups, and interception. He does a little bit of it all for Texas Tech. And then on the West Virginia side, I've got C.J. Donaldson. He had 2 touchdowns on 96 yards for West Virginia in the win over UCF. And then for the defense, I'm going Anthony Wilson. He's had a kind of an up and down year. He's had his fair share of struggles, but it's hard to pick a key player to watch on the defense. I can't go with Josiah Trotter every week, or that'd be pretty boring. So we're going to go with Anthony Wilson to eliminate the big explosive plays because, Gene, that's what Texas Tech does a whole lot of. So let's go ahead and start with them on the offensive side. So Texas Tech's offense, West Virginia's defense saw some progression or some improvements, I guess, to some degree with the West Virginia pass defense. But it was UCF. They were on what was their third string quarterback, Dylan Risk. They even threw in Ja'Cory Brown there a couple of times. Who I don't believe he threw a pass, but it's just been a run heavy approach from UCF. That's what they do well. I don't know what to take from that game against UCF, but this is a whole different beast, as Neal Brown said earlier in the week. Texas Tech third in the Big 12 in passing yards per game at 292.5. Baron Morton has a touchdown to interception ratio of 25-7. He's just a tick under 3,000 yards on the year, completing 63% of his passes. Gene, I mean, this was kind of one of these matchups where you just kind of go, whew. Like if you're Baron Morton, you're salivating right now.
No, you are. You are. And that's the sad thing. You know, usually you get into a game like this and you feel somewhat confident that your defense can eliminate big plays. Mm-hmm. But this Texas Tech offense is a little bit scary because they can do both things well. They can throw the ball down the field well, and they can run it well. So what does that mean typically for a struggling defense? It means it's going to be a long day. That's what it would typically mean.
What was the word last week you used? Worried. That's the same thing. You know, just defending the other side of the offense.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about this week because I'm hoping that we can turn some things around. And because of Texas Tech, they're so aggressive in what they do. We need some takeaways.
You have to. Absolutely. I mean, you look at the way that they approach offense, it's high octane, up tempo. And that's the problem for West Virginia. If you go back early in the year, and I don't know if there's been another team that's gone maybe as fast outside of Pitt. Pitt's like the only team that I can really think of that really likes to go high octane. And they didn't do well against that. And they struggled to get lined up. They've talked about it at times that even when other teams have done it here and there, they have struggled to get aligned. So this is going to be a challenge. You got to get lined up first. You got to get the calls in quick. And you got to just try to do your best to eliminate the explosive plays. They are going to get yards. They're going to put up points. Absolutely. And the reality of it, too, is if you're going to win this game, you're probably going to have to score more than 31 points. And that's what West Virginia's done each of the last, three games at least, maybe 4.
4 games.
Not 100% sure off the top of my head. But this is going to be a challenge. And it's not just the pass, Gene. Like Taj Brooks, as I mentioned, for a team that is as good as it is throwing the football with Baron Morton, you don't really see this type of elite play from an offense where it's both pass and run. This is a true balanced offense. If you sell out to stop Taj Brooks, well, you're going to get carved up all day, and vice versa. So when you have an offensive attack like this, if you're Jeff Kuntz going into this, what is your game plan to slow this thing down as best as possible to give your offense a chance to win?
Well, to be honest with you, I think it starts up front. You have to win in the trenches. You have to win in the trenches up front. I think short tackling and either side, like from a running back's perspective, you have to get their backs to the ground, and you can't miss in space when you're throwing these medium range to long balls. You can't miss in space because they'll kill you. Yeah, and that's a hard Kuntz is definitely going to have his work cut out for him because the things that Texas Tech does well are the things that we don't do well. So you think
Yeah.
about it, we had trouble tackling all season. We had trouble. I call it spacing, meaning that every time there's a 50-50 ball, we're never in the right place. Space-wise, we're not in the right place. So usually we've been giving up those type of big plays. Texas Tech has a habit of, if you go back and look at the last 2 or 3 games, they gut you with a run play and come back and throw a ball, a long ball. Then they reverse it, throw a long ball, and then gut you on the ground. So when you say balanced, from a defensive coordinator standpoint, I'm sure Kuntz is probably going to be up this whole week trying to figure out, let me figure out rhythm-wise what they're trying to do to my defense. And then defense is going to have to come out, dude, and play aggressive.
Yeah.
We haven't played aggressive ball in a long time, Schuyler. Like, it's almost like we're hitting and falling on pillows. Like, I need to hear some stuff, bro. I need to hear
Hear the
some crack,
pads
crack.
clacking.
You understand? When I was a head coach, my thing, I was like, to my defense, I was like, I want, this is like popcorn. I want to hear pop, 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 pop. I want to hear popcorn sounds out there. I don't want to hear, no. No. So
You
I
want to
think
hear the play. You want to hear physicality.
there you go. Because I think if you don't, you want to bring that type of aggressive, tendencies consistently all 4 quarters to Texas Tech. Because if you don't, again, it's going to be a long afternoon. We can't afford that. We have to come in playing very physical up front and making sure when we get to the ball carrier or to the quarterback, we get there with some interesting intentions.
That's a really good nugget there. A good key to the game. Play with some physicality because I mean you're right. They have not played with that. I mean they've played with it in spurts at times, but even the spurts aren't long enough. So I think you've got to be able to do that. But Texas Tech's going to get the ball out quick, so it's not like you need to rely or put all your eggs in the basket that you're going to go out and get Baron Morton and bring him down to the ground, but you can still get your hands in passing lanes and affect the quarterback that way. You can be physical by jamming receivers playing press coverage, which they did play some man coverage these past 2 weeks. At times it's worked well. I don't know if we're to the point where you want to play a higher percentage of man coverage or press coverage, but you got to try something because everything that they've tried this year in terms of zone coverage has just been absolutely atrocious. So you've got to at least try. And when you look at the receiving threats, I mean, they spread it out as good as you could potentially ask for. They've got four guys here with at least 5 touchdown catches. You have another one, and their tight end and John Carlos Miller has 3. He hasn't been as involved. I believe he's been banged up too. But Josh Kelly's the number one guy that you're going to watch out for. He's got 80 catches on the year. It's 28 more than anybody on the roster. He's their guy where if something's not there or they need to have it, he's the guy that they're going to go to. He kind of reminds me, maybe not necessarily of the style of play, but just the intentions of trying to get him the ball of a DeKeel Shorts from back in the day where, hey, if it was
Absolutely.
third and West Virginia's got to have it, you got to look to number 6. He's going to come down with the football. Same thing
Right.
there with Josh Kelly. Probably a little more explosive, but yeah, he reminds me of DeKeel in that sense. And then Corey Eakin, he's going to be their explosive threat. He's got 6 touchdowns, averaging 14.3 yards a catch. So they can spread the ball out. But, Gene, something they've been doing these last 2 games that just creates another issue is throwing the ball to Taj Brooks. So not only has he been really good in the run game, but now they're throwing him the ball and he's making some things happen. 15 catches over the last 2 games, 9 last week against Oklahoma State. How do you – I mean, it's just like there's so many holes that you have to try and patch up, and I don't know that you have enough Band-Aids to cover it.
I think it's smart whenever you put a legitimate running back into your passing game because you create a matchup problem. What linebacker do you know or do you have on your roster that's going to be able to cover him down for down. All right. So then you're forced to maybe put in a nickel. But then if you put in a nickel in and you take a backer off the field, that kills you in the run game. You know what I mean? So it's almost
Pick your
like,
poison.
yeah, you're picking your poison, or you're going to act your most athletic linebacker. Listen, dude, 9 times out of 10, they're going to come out in a certain formation where we figure a high percentage of times they're going to get it to Taj in this particular space. We need you to do X or whatever. I tell you what's interesting, and again, playing man and man off in the disguises that you need to use, in my opinion, not to give away any type of a game plan. I don't even know if Kuntz is thinking that way. I'm going to play a lot of man off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to disguise that and make it look like it's one thing when it's really man off, because let's just say, for the sake of argument, and I don't even know if this is something he would be thinking, if you're going straight man across the board and you can't get your hands on these receivers,
oh, you're done for.
it's a wrap.
You're going to be
Yeah,
watching the back of their jersey.
Exactly. So for me, that's why I think man off in making sure that you want to keep everything in front of you, but more importantly, when they do catch it, and this is including Taj Brooks, you catch it and you got to get them to the ground. If that doesn't happen, you know what? Everything that we talked about is for naught. Because if you throw a short pass, let's say if you even throw a screen out there to Taj and he breaks a tackle and he's up the sideline for 15, 20 yards at a clip, the bleeding, you wouldn't be able to stop it fast enough.
Yeah.
Just because of the style of what they run offensively. So I'm really hoping, but this is a game, Schuyler, that the West Virginia defense should be looking forward to playing. If you want to win a game, this is the game that you really want to win, because this is the game that you can really stamp your hat on and say, look, they came in with all these weapons. And I know how they were looking at us, because usually when we played people like Rutgers back in the day, it was always stat day.
Yeah.
You pretty much knew.
This group's looking at this as stat day, that's for sure.
Right. And that's why I'm saying our defense, if I'm them, I'm looking forward to this matchup. But see, again, that's an attitude. That's a mentality. That's a gut check. Like, we looked forward to playing Pitt. We looked forward to playing Penn State. We looked forward to those games. Back in the day, Syracuse and the tough Boston College. We looked forward to that stuff. We wanted to mix it up. I don't know where we are mentality-wise with our current situation, but this game right here is a game that, if defensively, I would be really looking forward to playing. Could not wait if I'm on the defensive side of the ball.
And if you're Jeff Kuntz, like, this is another data point here. I'm just saying, if Neal Brown does hang around going into 2025, this is a statement type of game for him, in that saying, hey, like, I can do this thing full time if they go out there, play quality defense, or at least good enough defense to give your team a chance to win. And who knows, maybe he's like, hey, Neal, you don't got to go calling around. I'm your guy. And obviously they'll have to show some things in the bowl game as well, but it's another data point against a very explosive, high-octane offense. In my opinion, the best offense West Virginia's played this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not even close. So,
absolutely.
Spinning the block, West Virginia's offense, Texas Tech's defense. Garrett Green last week, up and down in the pass game, but again, it was electric with his legs. Well, maybe not quite as much. I guess I'm thinking about the Baylor game, but he did enough to win, I think. And was really complimented by C.J. Donaldson, who we mentioned earlier, got his first start of the season, Gene. I didn't even realize that. I know we talked about it for weeks on end. I didn't realize that he had not started a game. And that's what happens when you start him. He goes out there, he sets the tone early. I feel like I'm just pressing repeat here, but you get him out there early and he sets the tone for you. And I think in a game like this, against a team that wants to go as fast as possible, if I'm Neal Brown, I'm completely flipping the dial, and I'm saying we're going to tone this thing down a little bit. We're going to play to our tempo. We're going to force you to keep your offense on the sidelines for as long as possible. We'll play clock control. and will get you so ticked off because your offense is cold and you don't have to, the ability to go run 80 plays. I'm putting CJ Donaldson out there again. I'm going to run him, run him, run him, run him, run him over again. Bring in Jaheim White, run him. Garrett Green, run him. We're going to run the clock. Do you get a sense of the theme here, Gene? I don't want Texas Tech to catch any rhythm offensively. You don't need to worry about how fast they're playing and how many points they may score, because if they don't touch the ball but 5 or 6 times in the second, well, I should say 7 or 8 times throughout the duration of a game, you don't have to worry about giving up 50 points unless they score every time, which is possible, but you're limiting your chances. And unless if you go out and try to play to their style, then you're opening up a Pandora's box of craziness.
Listen, I couldn't agree with you more. The best way to stop a high-powered, potent, balanced offense is if they're on the sideline.
Yeah.
And the way you do that is exactly what you just dialed up. You have to control the tempo of the game, which controls the clock, and which controls how many touches they're going to get on the other side. And if you can do that consistently, average, that means Texas Tech really should have about 6 possessions.
Yeah.
Which sounds crazy. But if you're doing it the right way, actually, I would say probably 8 possessions, because usually somewhere in there's going to be, if you miscalculate something here or there, we're going to wind up putting the ball, where that's going to give them a possession. But I know for sure if that does not happen, it's going to be a long afternoon. You do not want their offense on the field all freaking day. Because obviously, conversely, that hurts our defense, because that means our defense is going to be on the freaking field all freaking day. So I agree with you 100%. We have to get CJ started early and often and just pound the rock, control the tempo. And I think if we control the tempo, we have the ability to control the game.
I 100% agree.
Sounds simple, but easier said than done. But I think that should be Neal's game plan.
I'm going through the schedule right now, and I'm about through it. But when West Virginia collects 35 minutes of possession, they are undefeated to this point. And let's see, I got one more game to go through here. Should have done this beforehand, but yes, they are 3-0. They beat Oklahoma State. They beat UCF last week, and the other game was Arizona, I believe. Let me double check. Yes, Arizona was 35 minutes, 4 seconds. If you hold on to the ball for 35 or more minutes, you're going to win. Easy as that, right? Maybe not so much, but there is a theme there. That's when you go back to last year and the 9 wins they had, there was a lot of those instances where they were just beating teams badly in time of possession, and that was what helped them win games. I think that can help you here again against an electric offense. In terms of the running game, so we talked about CJ, Texas Tech's run defense. Neal Brown said it's a good run defense, and yeah, he's going to say what he's going to say. But when you look at it, they are 9th in the Big 12 in yards per game allowed. But when you start really diving into the numbers and dissecting it, they're 12th in yards per attempt. So, and we're talking the Big 12 here. So 9th in rushing yards per game, 12th in rushing yards per attempt. To me, that per attempt number means a little bit more to me, because teams just may throw it more against you than they run it. So 4.5 yards a carry. My math is not the best, but if I run the ball 3 times, I believe that equates to a first down.
Come on.
So when you have CJ, you have Jaheim, you have Garrett, you have the horses to run the ball and keep that defense on the field. That, to me, seems like the number one key to the game. Anything else here that you want to hit on, West Virginia offense, Texas Tech defense?
Listen, we definitely have to execute. That's the bottom line. West Virginia has to execute. And I think sometimes when we're getting into a rhythm, sometimes we get a little bit cute. You don't have to. This is a game where you have to execute, and you pretty much have to put it in their face. Like, I'm not running no reverses, no trick. No, because there's no need to do that.
Right.
If I know every time, on average, I get my backs touching the ball and my line is doing what they need to do and we're executing well, we're going to get 4.8, 4.9, 5 yards to carry. I am going to run the football because I know, like you said, we need to control the clock. So if Neal is thinking that way right off the bat, and here's what's funny, we'll know the first 2 series.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly what he's thinking. Not the first series. We will know the first 2 series. Because typically, once again, I scripted anywhere between 15 to 25 plays, and I ran somewhere between 18 to 20 plays out of different formations, especially if you could not stop it. Yeah. So I know if he's scripting these plays, that's going to run you through the first 2 series where you really know what you're looking at, what they're doing defensively, and what really works for you. But again, my thing is we have to be able to execute these plays at a very high level if you want to win this football game on the road.
Well, I guess one more thing I wanted to touch on here is Texas Tech is dead last in the Big 12 in passing yards allowed a game. West Virginia doesn't have the most elite, connected passing game. But when they're giving up 309 yards a game, it can be very tempting. So how do you – if you're Neal, how do you balance trying to play clock control, but also understanding like when you look and see how vulnerable this team is against the pass, like you're kind of chomping at the bit a little bit. So how do you strike that balance of trying to keep control of the ball, but you still want to throw it too because that's where the big plays are probably going to happen more often than not.
So the funny thing is, right? Not to give away whatever Neal would do. I would come out the gate with a long ball. Right out the gate with a long ball, just see where we at, right? Then I would go to the ground because I know that they're susceptible against the run as well. I would pick my poison and say, well, if I throw a long ball, let's say if I connect on a long ball, that's demoralizing right out the gate. It's like, my God, it look like they're going to throw the ball all day, and then you hit them with the run game. But if I'm Neal Brown, I have to figure out what is going to be the not easiest path to resistance, because at this level, it's not really easy, but what's going to be the most consistent for me to do offensively that's going to, again, eat up the clock, but keep the ball moving. Let's keep matriculating the ball up the field, right? What's going to be the easiest path to do that? I don't know. Even there's going to be some discipline with Neal. Even if I can take these deep shots, I really think controlling the clock on the ground is going to be more beneficial than potentially chucking the ball down the field. I am going to do it. I'm going to do it the first play just to see. I want to see what
you're not dropping GG back 30 times in this game. It's just not going to happen.
We're not doing it. Listen, we're not doing that.
if Garrett Green has a stat line that ends with the 30 attempts or more, my guess is they probably lose the game. And I'm not saying that as a knock to Garrett. I'm just saying that just means they forced you out of the way you want to play.
That's not the formula that's going to win you the football game. Nah.
Right. So enough of the preview. We'll get to West Virginia, Texas Tech pick here in a second. So let's go ahead and start our weekly pick'ems. Gene, I hate to tell you, brother, it's bad news again for you. I went 5-0 last week. The last 3 weeks, Gene, I am 14-1. 14-1. I'm just going to take my bow. No.
Don't you take that bow. You go in there and kiss that beautiful baby girl.
Right.
She's the reason why you're 14-1, buddy. Don't take no credit for that.
Hey, you may be onto something. Since Grace Callihan has been born, I am 14-1 in these picks. The Mountaineers in real life are 2-1, so maybe things are starting to come together here. Thanks to
exactly.
So let's go ahead and get things started here with a little non-con action here in the final week of the year, but it's an in-state rivalry. South Carolina at Clemson, 12 o'clock noon on ESPN. South Carolina has had a quietly good season. It seems like they were just kind of hovering above a game or two, maybe 3 above 500 for the longest time. They're riding 8-3 into this game. A lot of people just kind of forgetting about South Carolina at this point. Mm-hmm. Clemson has some things to play for. I'm going to go with Clemson, but South Carolina, man, they are out to prove something. I love Shane Beamer. I think he's a really good head coach. He's going to get that thing humming. I think South Carolina's going to be a player in the SEC, but not in this game. I'm going with the Tigers.
It's funny you say that for the same exact reasons. At first, I was kind of going back and forth on this. I love Beamer. I think he's a great, coach. I think he really knows what he's doing down there, and you can see it. Like you said, they're quietly 8-3, right?
Yeah.
But I think when Clemson is feeling the way they're feeling right now, like they got something to prove, they're always tough to beat when they're in that mindset. So I'm going with Clemson as well.
Remember Desmond Howard like 2 weeks ago said, why the hell were we picking Kansas State, Arizona State? Well, the fans are probably going to think that when I throw this one up here on the screen. Kansas at Baylor, 12 o'clock noon on ESPN2. Why the hell are we picking this one, Gene? Well, because I'm trying to show some love to two of the hottest teams in the Big 12, or maybe even the country, actually. Kansas, right, the only team in FBS history to have a losing record and beat 3 straight ranked teams. They are humming right now. They are playing for a bowl game if they get this win on Saturday. Baylor, we've seen that lately too. They are playing really well on offense. They're humming along. It's not the biggest game in terms of Big 12 title or college football playoff implications, but a really good game here. So I'm going to go with Kansas. I think that offense is doing enough. Their defense can play. I trust their defense more in this game. I think that's where I'm leaning. Plus, a win gets them the bowl eligibility. I'm going Rock Chalk Jayhawk, baby.
It's so funny you say that because once again, I think you was looking at my notes.
Ah, okay. So we do agree.
Absolutely. No, I'm Jayhawks all the way with this. I think it's going to be a really good football game, and I'm glad that they're both playing well down the stretch, but I'm going with Kansas.
Into the SEC, Texas at Texas A&M, a old school Big 12 matchup here, 7:30 p.m. on ABC. I really want to pull the upset here. I really want to pull the trigger, Gene. I do. College Station is a tough place to play, and I don't know when the last time these two played, especially in College Station. I really don't know. It's probably been a while. I really want to do it, but I'm going to be smart here. I'm going to use my brain instead of my gut. And I'm going to go with the Longhorns. Texas getting the win, walk-off fashion, 58-yard field goal. Just kidding. Wow. Just kidding. Maybe a 38-yard field goal.
Well, again, I think you're in my notes, bro. I think you're in my notes. The same exact thing, and for the same exact reason. I just think that Texas has a lot more to play for, obviously. I think Texas has a point to prove. Yeah, I'm going to pick Texas. I was on the fence. I was on the fence at the Aggies, but no, I'm going to pick Texas. I think they come out on top in this game.
A massive one in the Big 12. Kansas State at Iowa State, 7:30 on Fox. Winner has a really good chance of getting to the Big 12 title. They still need some things to happen, of course, but I'm a huge Kansas State guy. I've been huge on Chris Kleiman ever since they hired him. I picked them to win the Big 12 last year. I picked them to get there this year, not to win it. But I'm going to stick with Kansas State. I think Iowa State's going to stub their toe again. I kind of predicted this a couple of weeks ago that once Iowa State lost that first game, that they would potentially lose a second not too long after. What do you know? They lost it the very next week. I think they have that situation here again. Iowa State's getting so close, Gene, to really being a year-in and year-out contender in the Big 12. I just think they're knocking on the door. They're not quite there just yet. Kansas State gets the win, has a chance to go to the Big 12 title game.
This is so crazy because once again,
you may have to start taking some shots here to get in this thing.
I got Kansas State because I don't think, for me, Iowa State sometimes they don't. At 1 minute it looks like they're getting it, and then the next minute they do something like you said, they just stub their freaking toe. It's almost like they hit their own head. So yeah. I don't see them. Listen, I like Kansas State. I'm a Kansas State guy too now. I think that they are just so well coached from top to bottom. They don't beat themselves. You have to actually beat them. So I like Kansas State in this one as well.
In the game we are all here for, it's West Virginia and Texas Tech, the final game of the regular season. Is it, Gene, the final game of the Neal Brown era? That's a question we asked earlier in the show. We'll see what happens. Mountaineers looking for win number 7, conference win number 6. Can they get it out in the road in Lubbock against the Red Raiders? Here's Neal Brown on this week's matchup.
Texas Tech, talking about them, they've got a really good football team. Joey does a good job. Tough place to go play, and so long trip, but our guys are excited about making it. Offensively, I think it starts with them. Tempo, they're going to play at a really high tempo. The running back's an elite player. Brooks has been in this league for a long time, been really productive both in the run game and the throw game. Morton, the quarterback, is playing well. He gets the ball out of his hands super fast. He's a threat to run too. And they're talented at tight end and wideout, and they're big. You know, I think that the length that they have is really what sticks out. Defensively, they've played well versus us in the past. They played the run well this year. Kind of mix up their fronts, multiple fronts. They'll blitz a lot, especially run blitzing. They'll mix up their coverages, play quite a bit of man. They forced a lot of takeaways, so I think taking care of the ball is going to be huge, and so it's going to be a challenge.
All right, so it is West Virginia and Texas Tech kicking off at 12 noon Eastern on FS1. It's an 11 a.m. local kick, so it's an early riser for the Red Raiders. Man, I don't want to go against the Mountaineers in the final game of the regular season, Gene, but I'm going to have to. That's just the way this thing works out, right? Again, like I said last week, every time the noise starts to grow a little bit more and more and more, it's never going to quiet from the outside, but I think the pressure from within is starting to heighten. And every time that you feel like that's happening, a subpar below average team comes along like a UCF or a Cincinnati or an Arizona, and they win, and they kind of quiets it down just a tad. Whenever a team with a pulse comes in, it's not typically gone West Virginia's way. So Texas Tech, they've played quality football at points this year. They've kind of been up and down here in the last month or so. But this offense is just too scary, man. I don't see how they're going to be able to stop them. I know, like I said in the preview portion of this, they need to play to their style. I feel like at some point, maybe towards the end of the second quarter or early third quarter, they're going to force West Virginia to play their style, and they're going to get out of it, and that's just going to be the end of it. So West Virginia falls to Texas Tech, ending the season 6-6.
Wow. You know what's so crazy about this? So Texas Tech is 7-4, correct?
Yes.
So I thought about this whole thing, and my thoughts were, I never have ever gone against West Virginia. And I'm looking at this game, and I can't even pick it with my heart. I got to pick it with my brain. And I know better. I have to go with West Virginia.
I knew that was tough. I knew it.
I have to for this reason. I want the Mountaineers to go to Lubbock and really prove a point to themselves, not to anybody else, to themselves, that we are the football team that we wanted to be. This game will be the combination of us putting it all together and winning on the road with a team, as we say, that does have a pulse. I'm sure they're hearing this stuff. Yeah, I'm sure they got to. I want WVU, I want our Mountaineers to say, enough is enough. Let's put together 4 quarters of a hell of a football game to beat them in Lubbock, which will be hard to do. They are a quality football team. They're a decently coached football team. But I can't go against my Mountaineers. Now, I'll tell you this, and I said it last week. If we lose this game and they bring Neal Brown back next year, I am not going to go. I just can't. It would be real difficult for me to support a Neal Brown team when I know that he's going to get out coached with anybody that has a pulse. Yes, I said it. So, but for this particular week, I'm going with my beloved Mountaineers.
Yeah, he passed the test last week for you, so I guess that gave him a little bit longer leash for you here on the Pick'ems portion of the show. So that is going to do it. We're going to put a bow on this thing for the final time this regular season. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Walkthrough Game Day Show each and every single week. We truly appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. Again, this is not the last one. We will have one for the bowl preview. Don't know the exact date. Obviously, that's going to correspond with when the game is going to actually be. we'll have it out a little earlier. I know we usually put this out on Thursday morning, so 2 days before the game. We'll have it out probably 4 or 5 days so you can really go back and watch maybe your time or two. So we will also have a signing day show, which Gene will also have a segment in on December 4th or 5th. Again, there's so many dates going on right now. I don't know exactly the date, but we will have a signing day show as well. So that'll be the next time you see Gene outside of the post-game show on Saturday, which will be after the game. So we will recap West Virginia and Texas Tech. Make sure you hit that subscribe button here on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI. Give us a follow on X at SI_WVU. For the legendary running back, Eugene Napoleon, I'm Schuyler Callihan. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you on Saturday for the post-game show.